Hey, good evening, and welcome to For Your Information 7. My name is Collin Knopp-Schwyn. I am the host of 4YI. This is the seventh one of these that we are doing. I am joined tonight by my co-host for the evening, Landry Levine. Landry, welcome.
Hey, Colin, thanks for having me. Very happy to be here as a co-host.
And thank you for agreeing to do this on such short notice.
No, thank
We
you.
Okay, thank me.
Yeah,
Uh, So, returning guests will recognize you as a frequent presenter on For Your Information. Um, and frequent housemates will also recognize you as my housemate.
yeah, yeah. And I have to say, anyone who's seen the show regularly will kind of notice that a lot of my 4YIs have been on political topics. So I feel a bit typecast that you asked me to co-host the political themed 4YI this month.
Well, I can promise you that it was sheerly because I've pretty much asked everyone else that we live with who was available already to do it. So you were just really the only choice tonight.
So it wasn't typecast. It was that I was the last possible choice. I was like the least viable option. Okay, that's good to know. I'll
Yeah,
record that.
exactly. But very, very glad to have you with us for this. I know you've frequently done a lot of pieces about left history, left politics throughout history. And I'm excited to find out if that's also what you're going to do tonight as well.
We'll see.
So, for folks who are new to For Your Information, this is a more or less monthly show that we started doing in May of 2018, I think, or was it May of 2019? Sometime in 2018 or 2019 at the Tank Physical Theater in 36th Street in beautiful Midtown Manhattan. The Tank supported us for another 4YI, and then the pandemic happened, and we moved 4YI online, which we have been doing monthly since June now. So, these are about 4-minute presentations by people who have some intense niche knowledge in very specific topics that they really like to talk about. Tonight's 4YI is the first one we have done that is a themed 4YI. It's the politics themed one. And this is a part of the Tank's Fast and Furious countdown to the election programming. So there's a bunch of political programming the Tank is running, including this very show. So I see we have some folks with us tonight. Folks, thank you for joining us tonight. We have just 5 presenters this evening. We have myself, we have David Lawson, we have Abby Mahler, we have Corinne Candelaria, and we have Landry Levine over there. You are on the side. If anyone is in the chat, feel free to say hi. Here's Mike. Hi, Mike. Otherwise, should we get started with the show?
Let's do it. Nothing would make me happier and more content than to start the show.
I
But
love
I'm
that.
not starting. You're starting. So that's easy for me to say, I guess.
Perfect. All right, cool. So I'm going to talk a little bit about a political cartoon here, a very specific political cartoon. And we're going to have fun with it. Ooh. You know what? Let me tell you, I did not screen test, did not test my own one of these here. And I am not ready to go, it seems. So just give me, Landry, do you know how to vamp?
Oh, yeah. I've vamped before. I can do a vamp. Um, Everyone, I'm so glad that we're all together tonight to talk about politics, right? Today, myself, Colin, our roommate Mike Facentes, who you saw up on the screen earlier, we went and voted. We went and did the only hallowed political activity in our society. Um, it was longer than I thought I would ever spend to attempt to vote. We went to the Brooklyn Museum and stood in line for 2.5 hours, and then we voted, and we were in and out. They had a great setup. It was really wonderful. Highly recommend if that is listed as your polling site. that you go to the Brooklyn Museum. I also highly recommend you go to wherever your polling site is supposed to be for early voting. Okay.
Thanks for vamping, Andre. Yeah. Thank you so much for doing that. I think I'm ready for real this time. I legit am ready. All right. Here we go. Political cartoon, even more boring and confusing than issue, or how Minnesota became the Gopher State. Just take us out here. Go ahead, take all this in. This is the 1857 political cartoon that gave Minnesota the nickname the Gopher State. We got gophers pulling a train car over the mine of corruption towards something called the Slough of Despond. They're being trailed by a guy on a barrel of gin, all followed by Satan. Above are three separate vignettes: a farmer boxing a gopher man, another gopher man delivering a speech, and a final gopher man rolled up in a ball. What does it mean? What does it all mean? Like so many political cartoons of the era, and also every other era, this one's basically working from a thing bad premise. The thing that's bad in this case is a proposed amendment to the Minnesota Constitution to lend the young railroad industry $5 million. What happened was this. In the 1850s, the U.S. federal government began to give away public lands for the construction of railroads throughout the country. Minnesota, not yet a state, was granted land for this purpose in March 1857, but the bill did not simply say, "Mere capitalists, have some free stolen land to do trains on." Instead, it stipulated that land could only be acquired progressively as the sites for railroads were surveyed and graded. A special session of the Minnesota Territorial Legislature was called in April, and the next month, a finalized omnibus bill was passed, which designated general areas for 3 different Minnesota rail companies to begin their surveying so that they could claim federal lands for construction. Of course, you all know what happens next. It's the Panic of 1857, obviously, which strikes Minnesota hard that August and suddenly leaves railroad companies without investors to jumpstart their surveying efforts. Without funding to survey, they cannot hope to acquire the federal lands to begin laying track. Seeking funding, railroad companies turn to Minnesota itself. The territory has recently ratified its first constitution, which bans the lending of its credit. But the railroads contrive a scheme to amend the constitution, giving them exception to this rule. If Minnesota grants them loans for up to $5 million in the form of bonds, then they shall pay them back, or should they default, relinquish any completed railroad and land thereupon to the control of the territory. This is the controversial $5 million loan bill. Let's return back to this mess. So Robert O. Sweeney, a St. Paul artist, produced this double-stuffed Oreo of a piece, arguing that Minnesota should not loan the railroads $5 million of the state's credit. Sweeney depicts the railroad company men as gophers pulling along Minnesota's legislators. The gopher men all claim to have checks back in Wisconsin or back elsewhere, and they support one another's claims heartily. Nonetheless, they lead the state into a slough of despondency. A nearby gopher offers to let them pass through his hole, as it's the only way through. The devil, dancing behind the train, suggests that he'll develop the state's resources when they get to his depot, which I assume means hell. Up here, an ordinary farmer does battle with the greedy gopher man. Another gopher man denounces Minnesota's previous territorial governor, who opposed the bill. The whole impression the cartoon leaves is that Sweeney hates this bill, that it's bunk, that Minnesota, no matter how much they desire to develop their resources, should not idly give the railroads $5 million. The $5 million loan bill passes after a hefty fight in the Minnesota House and Senate in March 1858. Because it calls for a constitutional amendment, Minnesota's voters must now ratify it, which they do, to everyone's surprise, overwhelmingly, 25,000 to 6,000. In the town of Winona, over 1,000 people vote yes. Only a single voter votes no. The project fails miserably. The railroad bonds within 2 years lose their value, and, being the railroad company's only resource, the railroads declare bankruptcy. What little work they have completed was shoddy, covering just 239 miles of track altogether. The railroad companies have totally defrauded the public to the tune of $5 million. The Constitution is amended again to repeal the railroad loan. Okay, but why did Sweeney depict the railroad men as gophers? Surely there are more odious rodents. It turns out that the original omnibus bill, back in May 1857, included a provision to fund the removal of blackbirds and gophers from Minnesota lands. Both creatures were considered prominent farmers' pests, and I think they were just on everyone's mind in 1857, kind of in the same way that a couple years ago, everyone was always talking about and making jokes about 50 Shades of Grey, even in situations where it wasn't particularly pertinent. It was just kind of the thing that was funny. Except Sweeney modeled his gophers on striped gophers, which are different than another Minnesota rodent, the Plains pocket gopher. The striped gopher is also known as the 13-lined ground squirrel. That's right. These gophers aren't even true gophers. They are squirrels. So, just as the railroad companies fooled Minnesota all those years ago, so too has Robert Sweeney fooled us all to this day. Thank you so much.
Woo! That was great. Wow, Collin, you killed it.
Thank you.
I've seen you working on this for like the past several days, and we've been talking about this for a while because I'd be like, what are you doing for your 4Y? And you're like, oh, I'm doing the Gopher State thing. But you really made it a lot more clear than I thought it would be. It seemed very arcane and confusing, but you really made it simple.
Thank you. It was an absolute bog to like try to understand. I feel like culturally, anything that doesn't have a Wikipedia article is like deep research, and the $5 million loan bill does not have a Wikipedia article. So it was really me wading through like historical documents in a way that I love doing.
I can attest. You were like, I think you said a couple days ago you had like dozens of tabs open on research. So I want everyone to know that Collin put a lot of work into this.
Thank you so much. Let's jump on over to our next presenter now. It's David Lawson, who I believe this is your second time presenting. Hi, David.
Hey, Collin. Hey, Landry. Yes, this is my second time. Always, happy to be on any show at the Tank. Love doing this last time. So thanks for having me here.
Well, welcome back, David. What are you going to be talking about today?
I'm going to be doing kind of a current events type thing, which I'm going to be performing something about. Am I sharing my screen right now, by the way?
You are sharing the StreamYard screen, yeah.
Okay, let's see. And is that up right now?
It is not up right now.
Oh, goodness gracious. Well, my vamping will be saying I'm going to be doing some history about right now, sharing some political signs that I've seen throughout my neighborhood of Astoria, Queens during election season, specifically this month. I do believe I'm sharing my screen now.
There it is. Yep.
Okay. I'm good to start.
All right. 3, 2, 1, take it away.
All right. Would love to share with you, as I said, some political signs around Astoria, Queens, this October 2020. Throughout the summer, there have been Black Lives Matter signs throughout the neighborhood. This one here is one of my favorites. I also happen to love this dog with the ACAB logo. All cops are bastards, in case you didn't know that. I've also seen stuff like this Thank the Police sign. Thank the Police. That's one of those one of those symbols or meanings that seems really innocent on its face, but if Thank the Police is your response to Black Lives Matter, you're probably pretty racist. And as you can see, someone put an American flag near this sign here. Someone also put an American flag here on this Black Lives Matter sign, which made me think of this quote I've heard so much over the last few years. Racism is so American that when you protest it, people think you are protesting America. In fact, on 24th Avenue, here in Astoria, this same American flag person seems to be in this war with somebody posting these stickers of Trump Pence out now. Like right here, the American flag sticker person seems to have the upper hand, but I would say that here, because of the removal of those American flag stickers, that the Trump Pence out now person got the upper hand. During the census, the campaign office of Zoran Mondani has been posting these great census signs that, if you look at the top, says for every person who completes the census, our neighborhood gets $6,000 per person, which I think is really great messaging. Zoran Mondani ran to the left of our incumbent New York State Assembly member and won. That's right. Every now and then you can actually run to the left of somebody and win. It's not a sign per se, but I did want to show you that one night this month I found this lying on the ground. I found a Michael Dukakis Lloyd Benson 1988 campaign button, and I was scared to find this because I thought maybe it was me placing a hex on Joe Biden and Kamala Harris's ability to defeat an incumbent Republican, because Dukakis and Benson certainly could not defeat them. It's Halloween season, and I love how my neighbor has put up this Halloween decoration with a sign that is advocating all of us to follow the science on COVID-19. And while this is an intentional political sign, every time I walk by this other one, I laugh because it's unintentionally, politically, and gory. Someone has a sign that says "End White Supremacy," and there just happens to be a leftover skeleton hand lying right below "End White Supremacy." Sometimes, though, I've noticed folks take kind of like a nonpartisan election stance, like this local business that has the sign, "Presidents are temporary, Wu-Tang is forever." And, they were mentioning Landry in the beginning of the show, early voting. I actually early voted on Saturday. I had to wait 3 hours here in Astoria. And there was this toy shop that was offering up their restroom with this sign while also making fun of how ugly their restroom was. And there were also the great folks from Astoria Mutual Aid were standing behind this sign here, offering free snacks and free water to anyone waiting in that really long line. And I eventually did vote 3 hours. So the bathroom, the free snacks, and all that were definitely needed. And for all you folks watching, I hope you have a voting plan, or that you voted already. I hope you're voting on the Working Families Party line to keep that voting line alive here. And I hope you have a great down ballot Democrat to vote for, like I did with Zoran Mondani. And I'll tell you, I'm sure a lot of folks watching this are probably holding their nose and going to vote for Joe Biden to be our 46th president. And I certainly am doing a good amount of that as well. And I wanted to end this very current events history of political science here in Astoria, Queens in October 2020 with what I think is the single most relevant campaign sign I have seen in my neighborhood this month. It's this. Thank you very much, everyone. Stay safe. Go out and vote. Thanks for watching.
Woo!
That was great.
Thanks so much, David.
Yep. Thank you all. And thanks again for watching.
Of course.
Zoran in Queens. We love to see it. We love all the content you gave us. That was excellent.
Thanks so much.
I feel like I should mention here, as the part of the show is that there is a secret judge somewhere in the audience who's watching. Our secret judge has selected 2 secret prize categories that all of the presenters tonight, except for me, are being judged on. And then at the end of the night, the secret judge will convey to me what the secret prize categories were and who its winners were. And then each of those presenters will receive a $10 cash prize. So to everyone in the audience, your admission is supporting the $10 cash prize for our winning presenters. Thank you so much. I want to bring this comment up on the screen as well. Should we jump into another one, Landry?
I think yes. And I think if I said no, it wouldn't matter anyway. So I'll say yes.
It's true. One other thing I will mention before we jump into the next one. Up next is Abby Mahler. But I will mention that there is also going to be a Q&A portion at the end of the show. If anyone in the audience has any questions for any of our presenters, or if any of our presenters have questions for each other, you'll have a few minutes at the end of the show to ask those. All right, let's bring Abby in. Hey, Abby.
Yep, hello. Okay. All right. I'm a little nervous, but also excited. So here we go. Let's share that screen. Here we go. All righty.
All right.
Oh, I'm also talking about something that happened this year, and it's about something that happened to me because I take the drug hydroxychloroquine, so this is also very personal. To that end, this story is not over. This is just, what's happened so far, and if anybody watching has any sources or anyone that they want to connect me with, I really want to hear them. So here we go. With the mass disruption caused by the novel coronavirus, there has been nothing short of a race to find safe and effective treatments. This desperation, in combination with the rise of autocratic regimes around the world and the mass disinformation campaigns that have accompanied them, has been an unprecedented nightmare for scientists attempting to parse good data from bad at the internet's pace. Not to mention the doctors and patients forced to deal with the implications and consequences at both local and global scales. So to be clear, as of right now, the World Health Organization advises that current data shows that this drug, hydroxychloroquine, does not reduce deaths among hospitalized COVID-19 patients, nor help with moderate disease. So now that I have said that, we can get into the year that we all lived. Let's go back to February. There were indications out of China that chloroquine and its synthetic sibling hydroxychloroquine showed promise as both prophylactic and therapeutic for COVID-19. There was good reason to consider this. Chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine are best known as anti-malarial drugs, but right now they're primarily used for autoimmune diseases like rheumatoid arthritis and systemic lupus erythematosus, which I have. Please note my redness. Physicians observed that the treating COVID-19 with hydroxychloroquine helped reduce cytokine storms, which is a major inflammatory response that some patients experience while trying to ward off the virus. And so in their weakened state, the inflammation from the cytokine storm proved to be as deadly as other possible outcomes. So knowing that chloroquine and hydroxychloroquine have immunomodulating abilities, like the reason that that's why autoimmune patients take them. The thought was that this treatment could also be lucrative for COVID-19. So the early press from China was bolstered by questionable physicians from France and the US, and in conjunction with some wild tweeting from media pundits and lay people, even public figures like Elon Musk, that led us all to a press conference on March 19th with President Trump. Here he stated that hydroxychloroquine was an old drug and therefore wrongly presumed safe in settings like COVID-19 treatments. He said, if things don't go as planned, it's still not going to kill anyone. That's not true. Shortly after, he tweeted the unsubstantiated theory that hydroxychloroquine and azithromycin was potentially one of the biggest game changers in the history of medicine. As the president continued tweeting, and preprints, which are not peer-reviewed science, they are waiting upon peer-reviewed science. So the president continued tweeting and preprints were released. COVID-19 kept spreading and hydroxychloroquine prescriptions skyrocketed. Here you can see some of these numbers. You can see on March 19th, that was the rise. That's from the New York Times, and right next to it, you can see right after that, March 23rd, 25th, that's the number of mentions that different networks used. And so Fox News, you can see, claimed, did a lot of promoting of hydroxychloroquine. There were reports of healthcare providers like dentists writing off-label prescriptions, just in case. They were writing them for friends, for family. It was a mess. State public health agencies scrambled, and rheumatic patients like myself made pleas on social media and conventional media to attempt to stymie what was becoming a major drug shortage. Concurrently, there were reports of toxic ingestions of the drugs, including at least one fatality from the consumption of chloroquine phosphate, which is an aquarium product. Regardless, the FDA issued an emergency use authorization, an EUA, for patients hospitalized for COVID-19 on March 28th. Getting into April, the president continued to espouse false information. On April 4th, he claimed that lupus patients were not contracting COVID-19. This is not supported by literally any data, and if anything, we're at more high risk because we are immunocompromised. This, of course, did not matter to the president, nor did any of the preprints released in April that documented an alarming increase in cardiovascular risk for patients treated with hydroxychloroquine, especially in combination with antibiotics. These studies, as well as a few others, led to warnings from the NIH and the FDA. All right, let's get into May. All of you may enjoy some of these memes that I found while I was living on the internet during this period of time. So May saw even more studies published. They were observational, which is not great, but we'll take what we can get. They showed associations between hydroxychloroquine use and severe outcomes like intubation and death. Others showed no associations with any change in ICU transfer or survival outcome. Despite this mounting evidence, Trump announced that he himself was taking hydroxychloroquine as COVID prophylaxis. He cited anecdotes that frontline healthcare workers were doing the same. May 22nd, there was a huge observational study released by The Atlantic. It pulled data from this website called Surgisphere. It supposedly showed that there was a big increase in mortality and new arrhythmias for hydroxychloroquine alone and with other drugs. This publication prompted huge outcry. Within 24 hours, the WHO trials were suspended, and public health agencies in France, Italy, and Belgium took similar steps to roll back their hydroxychloroquine usage. Now, there were questions about the availability of the data and the lack of ethical approval. Third-party reviewers were not given any access to verify the data, and subsequently this study, as well as a related one in the New England Journal of Medicine, were retracted. Bad look for the Lancet yet again. All right. Now, I wish I could say that that was the end of everything. Sorry, I jumped a little ahead there. I wish I could say that was the end of everything. Because in June there were some good science. Released. There were randomized control placebo trials that were double-blind. These studies didn't show any significant differences between treatment and control groups as treatment or prophylaxis, leading to suspensions of trials at Oxford, WHO, and the NIH, among others, all citing lack of efficacy. So, as I said, wish I could say this was the end of it. On July 27th, a group of doctors at a press conference in Washington, D.C. was live streamed on Facebook via Breitbart. This group called themselves America's Frontline Doctors, and they endorsed hydroxychloroquine as a cure. Though Facebook quickly removed the original video, citing unsubstantiated claims, copies quickly spread unchecked through private Facebook groups, especially conspiratorial ones related to anti-vax and QAnon. Trump and Trump Jr. retweeted Breitbart's original tweet of the video, and it went more viral than Plandemic. It was a fucking mess. Indeed, the right-wing propaganda machine is still doing free marketing to hydroxychloroquine every single day. They, like this guy named Harvey Rich from Yale, who has been disavowed by his colleagues. He's an epidemiologist that asserts that hydroxychloroquine could save up to 100,000 lives, citing not only well-known quacks, but an ecosystem of AstroTurf websites that have all been making the right-wing rounds. You can see on the side there how this data is made to look like real, a real website, but it is clearly not once you really get into it. So, where are we now? We're pretty stagnant. There's a huge stockpile of hydroxychloroquine. There's 63 million doses in the federal stockpile, and an unknown amount in stockpiles in Florida and Utah, to name the ones that we know that have stockpiles, but there's likely even more. And this is really unlikely to be distributed to patients in need. Those who continue to promote hydroxychloroquine are notably using similar pivots in their logical gymnastics to keep their horse in the race. I could go into that, but I know I'm going over time. And in summation, this sucked so much. It's a really sad story. It benefited no one, which should have been what should have been a question for scientific studies to work out became an all-out information war that resulted in tainted studies and patients done harm. The double-edged sword of easily available information in the form of pre-printed scientific papers shows the importance not only of the peer review process, but of scientific communication to the lay public. The impact this polarizing discourse has had on meaningful scientific studies cannot be understated. Enrollment in large-scale randomized controlled trials decreased precipitously after the FDA's EUA, the Emergency Use Authorization. And people that did participate may have been exposed to bias reporting that could have swayed otherwise well-constructed studies. This should be a cautionary tale, and I had an awful time during it. If you can see there, I was harassed not only by this person, but like just dozens of anonymous people online. It was truly, truly awful. I cannot recommend not going through this enough. So thank you for giving me the time.
Woo! Sheesh.
Ooh. Mega oof. Wow.
Mega oof.
Just checking in, you little fraud.
We, Liz and I quote one of the main people who harassed me all the time. She's a mess.
Yeah.
Was it just checking in, you little fraud? Is that what I heard there?
Yeah. She would out of I would wake up to a message from her if I hadn't heard from her in weeks. I'd be like, just checking in, you little fraud. Are you still hawking your medication? Oh, I forgot. Can you pass me it?
The crown.
I forgot to wear my crown, you guys.
Here you go. You're beautiful.
This is my corona. This is a crown I made of my old hydroxychloroquine bottles. Let me get it on correctly here. I thought it was apt, considering the coronavirus is named as such, because it has a crown-like structure. Yeah.
Wow.
I would love to talk to you. any and everyone about this. I've gone on podcasts. I went on my local NBC affiliate. I have been not shutting up about this for months. So yeah, hit me up.
No, there's no better space to not shut up about something than this.
Absolutely. Thank you for letting me go very over time.
Oh yeah, no problem. Thank you so much for sharing.
Thank you.
Awesome.
Wow.
Landry, how are you doing?
I mean, I'm taking all of that terrible, miserable information we just learned, and I'm just like processing it slowly.
For YTMI for your terrible, miserable information.
I like that a lot. Thank you for that presentation because that was really good.
Yeah, thank you so much, Abby. Up next, we have Corinne Candelaria presenting on, I'm actually not entirely sure what. I think cars, maybe cars. Corinne, you've got two videos down here on the bottom. Do I bring them both on? I'm gonna bring this one on. All right, sounds good. How you doing, Corinne?
I'm doing well, thank you. My Wi-Fi has been in and out, so I have an older computer on with what I think is a stronger connection, but this one's working, and I play favorites. So.
I love this. I love what's going on.
Put on
right
the
now.
2 Corinnes. That's
Let's
what the
take a look. Here we go.
The other Corinne appears just to be like your window, which I love.
Yeah, also beautiful.
What are you talking about today, Corinne?
Today we're going to take a look at Volkswagen, oder Volkswagen, the people's car.
All right, take it away.
Thank you. 2020 has forced all Earthlings to adapt, to innovate, to notice, to declare how we will devote today to create a healthier tomorrow. Corporations included. This past spring, Volkswagen announced their production of an electric revolution. The company plans to abandon the gas platform entirely and create an electric infrastructure everywhere to support this. The vision, Volkswagen announced, is to offer electric vehicles for millions, not just for millionaires. This concept, of course, of having an automobile for the masses is the same one the company was founded on nearly 100 years ago. At that time, only the economic elite could afford cars. So the founders of Volkswagen believed that all people should be able to own a car. It is for the broad masses that this car has been built, said Volkswagen in 1938. Except it wasn't. Since Jewish Germans were deprived of the right to drive a vehicle that same year, and also because it was commissioned by Chancellor Hitler, who hoped to create a car for his masses to support his campaign to build a network of autobahns across Germany. The car would also satisfy Hitler's interest in mass production and allow him to fanboy over Henry Ford, who he'd had become fascinated with while he was imprisoned. So Ford would actually be the only American cited by name in Mein Kampf, and Ford, being a staunch anti-Semite, was psyched. So here he is in 1938 Detroit, receiving Nazi Germany's highest decoration for foreigners, the Grand Cross of the German Eagle. So in case there were any questions about whether the mass production of the same identical product seemed a little supremacist, there's this. Now, despite the accolades, Hitler vowed to outproduce Ford with his own Volkswagen. So in 1932, Hitler doodles a prototype, and at Berlin's 1933 World's Fair, he meets Dr. Ferdinand Porsche. Yeah, dieser Porsche. Porsche had been developing a concept for a small, inexpensive car with an iconic as Coca-Cola rounded top. And in 1934, Hitler and Porsche started discussing plans for Volkswagen, or the people's car. The car would be air-cooled, affordable, and adorable. In 10 months, a prototype was born, and Adolf was thrilled. Adolf was also obviously totally in charge, which means that there were no financial restrictions, there were no competitors, and it wasn't even a problem that Hitler had no driver's license. Here's their logo. After the war, in 1972, Hitler's dream was fulfilled when the Beetle passed the Ford Model T and became the best-selling automobile of all time. Now, in 1991, Volkswagen paid to support former forced laborers who had made up 60% of their workforce during the war, manufacturing a vehicle for the masses that didn't include them. This is also really significant because it highlighted the need for compensation to non-Jewish victims of forced labor who had often been overlooked. But today, Volkswagen aims to be carbon neutral by 2050, offering a type of reparations for their emission scandal of 2015, in which they violated the Clean Air Act and contributed to acid rain, asthma, and the deterioration of our ozone. And the consumer will forgive them again, because we are big-hearted hippies, or because consumers don't care, or because it isn't about forgiveness, it's about the masses making, drinking, and enjoying lemonade. Thank you.
Oh, man. That was incredible.
Thanks.
Sheesh.
You know what was weirdly wild is that logo that you showed, where like it never occurred to me that companies would like try to have like really hip, cool logos like based on like the swastika. Like
Yeah.
it's kind of wild. It's like, wow, artistic, beautiful, cutting edge swastika. Yeah, hell yeah.
Right. Well, it was all part of his, plan to support the National Socialist Party. So it actually worked pretty well.
Yeah. Never thought about the Volkswagen in that way, but
I know, something that became a symbol for total peace. I mean, it's like every hippie starter pack has a little VW logo on it.
And that was, like the hippie movement was what, 20, 30 years after World War II. That's like a real quick like turnaround from this being the Nazi car to this being the car of peace.
It was not a long time. And then Disney, of course, came out with the Love Bug, Herbie, which really got the ball rolling. And Disney, of course, was also famously anti-Semitic. But this, was after his time.
Disney's like, we're going to get in our element. We're going to rehabilitate Volkswagen, Nazi car. We're not, we're a Nazi light animation company. It's all going to be good. It's all great.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, we should not mass produce cars. I think everyone should build their own cars.
Yeah, or num-tots forever. Public transportation.
Yeah. No, definitely. I
like this vision, Collin, of like, how people like build like small planes from like kits. Like my uncle like built like just like a single passenger like plane from a kit. I love the idea that like cars would just all be kits now. Like if you want a car, buy the fucking kit and manufacture it yourself.
There's an Onion article, I think, that the headline of which is something like man takes getting fired from Ford plant as excuse to finally start his own car company. Which tickles me so much. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Corinne. That was a real eye opener.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. All right. Well, we have just one more presenter tonight. It's none other than you, Landry. Can you believe it? Just want to remind everyone that there is a quick Q&A session after Landry presents here, and then we will announce our prize winners here. So if anyone has any questions for the presenters, they are all still lurking here in the room, just off stage there. So feel free to drop those in the chat now or in a few minutes after Landry is done. And likewise, presenters, if you have any questions, hold on to those for a few minutes here. All right, Landry, what in the world are you telling us about?
That's a great question, Collin. I'm here tonight to talk about a hotly contested presidential election fought between, on the one hand, a guy who hates immigrants and black people and promises to drain the swamp, against a sort of boring, generic, moderate guy who nobody's really excited about. I'm talking, of course, about the election of 1876. So this presidential election was perhaps the most controversial presidential election in U.S. history. President Grant is considering a third term, but his administration was rocked with scandals and corruption charges, so it's a no-go. The Democrats sense an opportunity to win back the presidency for the first time in 20 years, ever since they lost the Civil War. But they've been rebuilding their political power by saying that the enfranchisement of black Southerners has led to corruption and a waste of taxpayer money. Fitting the theme, the Democrats nominate Samuel Tilden, beloved governor of New York, who had prosecuted machine politicians and sent the notorious Boss Tweed to jail. Tilden runs on a promise to replace the corrupt Grant administration with honest, efficient government, restricting Asian immigration and ending Reconstruction in the South. He's beloved by Democrats across the country. Republicans, meanwhile, don't quite know who to nominate. Speaker of the House James Blaine is the favorite, but he can't quite get a majority at the convention. By the seventh ballot, his opponents unite behind Rutherford B. Hayes of Ohio, described by Henry Adams as, quote, a third-rate non-entity whose only recommendations are that he is obnoxious to no one. Wow. So Tilden's campaign focuses on a promise to end Republican corruption, but Democrats have a bigger strategy. They're going to suppress black and white Republican voter turnout by disrupting meetings and rallies and using violence and intimidation through paramilitary groups like the Red Shirts and the White League. The election results get predictably very messy. Democrat Tilden, without a doubt, wins the popular vote by like a couple 100,000 votes. And he definitely also wins 184 electoral votes. He needs 185 to win, and there are 20 votes from 4 states that are up in the air. Florida, Louisiana, and South Carolina are all contested, with Democrats claiming to have won, but with reports of incredible election fraud. So like in South Carolina, for instance, 101% of eligible voters are said to have voted. Republican state electoral commissions throw out enough votes to deliver all 3 states to Hayes and defeat a Democrat attempt to throw out one of Oregon's electors, giving Hayes exactly the 185 votes needed to win. Democrats cry foul and send their own slates of electors from the contested states and threaten armed marches on Washington, while President Grant quietly brings troops to the Capitol. So we've got Tilden at 184 and Hayes at 165 with 20 votes contested. Now things are going to get nitty gritty. So the Constitution states that the President of the Senate shall, in the presence of the Senate and the House of Representatives, open all the electoral certificates and the votes shall then be counted. The Democrats insist that Congress should continue the practice that they followed since 1865, which was that the House and the Senate had to sign off on all the votes. The House had a solid Democratic majority, so by throwing out just one of states' votes, they'd be able to elect Tilden. Some Republicans, however, argued that as written, the rules gave the power to count the votes to only the president of the Senate, which was a Republican and would give Republicans the power to count the votes of the disputed states for Hayes. So it's a stalemate. On January 29th, Congress forms a 15-member electoral commission with 5 congressmen, 5 senators, and 5 Supreme Court justices. Congress sends 5 Democrats and 5 Republicans. And for the Supreme Court, we get 2 Democrats, 2 Republicans, who together choose for the 5th tie-breaking vote, political independent David Davis, who had been appointed to the Supreme Court by Lincoln after being Lincoln's campaign manager in 1860. According to one historian, no one, perhaps not even Davis himself, knew which presidential candidate he preferred. But now the Democrats fuck up, like big time they fuck up. The Illinois legislature appoints Davis as a senator. And Illinois Democrats think that by appointing Davis, they're going to be buying his vote on the Electoral Commission. But Davis promptly resigns as justice to go take his Senate seat. And the only judges left are Republicans. So the Republicans get an 8-7 majority on the Electoral Commission. They then award all 20 electoral votes to Hayes, who is quietly sworn in as president. Democrats threaten to challenge the results, but behind closed doors, the Compromise of 1877 is arranged. Democrats will accept the results in exchange for Republicans ending the military occupation of the South. They promptly do so, and the end result is that Southern Democrats have a clear path to using violence and intimidation to retake all state legislatures in the South. Within the next couple of decades, they are able to just completely disenfranchise Black Southerners, which, you know, the consequences of which we are still feeling today.
Whew. Good shit.
Whew, yeah. Oof is right.
I feel like that is so deeply interesting, and I had no idea that any of that ever happened.
Yeah, it was like probably the deepest like presidential election crisis and constitutional crisis like in American history, like similar to the election of 2000. I think those are like both up there. In some ways, 76 is like more unclear constitutionally, but both are decided by like the margin of just like hundreds of votes. Like the 2000 election was like 500 votes in Florida. This one was like 880 votes in South Carolina. So it's like, yeah, wild.
Whew. Well, I want to open up our Q&A portion now to anybody. I'm going to bring everyone on screen here for this briefly. So everyone, you ready to come on screen for a second? I sure hope so. Hey, Abby. Hey, David. Welcome back. I like this view. Let's do this view. So, Landry, I wanted to point out in yours that there was the slide you had of the two posters for the two campaigns, and those two posters, they looked identical to me. Like it was just like the two dudes' faces in the circles, and that was it.
The thing that I thought was really funny about those two posters is that so you've got like the two they both have like a tagline on them, and Tilden, the Democrats, his is like ship of state reform. Like it's got this whole like ship motif. So he's like, I'm gonna write the ship of state. Like I'm a trustworthy guy. And then the other one, the Hayes one, just says liberty and union, which is like a really funny example of like what they called at the time, like waving the bloody shirt or like waving the red shirt to just like remind everyone that very recently Democrats had like done the Civil War. So I feel like it's just like, he's like, I'm just running on the fact that I'm a Republican. Liberty and union, folks. That's all it takes.
I love it. Thank you. Do any of our presenters have any questions for each other? Valid if no. I have the results of the secret judge here. All right. So tonight we had two awards. This is I feel like the first time we've had awards with a theme like this. The first award is the David Blaine Award for Most Time Not Breathing. The second award is the Chris Angel Mind Freak Award for Most Mind-Blowing Presentation. Our secret judge tonight was former 4YI presenter Aaron Linker, who is watching the show. So our David Blaine Award for Most Time Not Breathing goes to Abby Mahler. Abby, congratulations.
Oh my God, thank you very much. Every single teacher I've had since kindergarten has told me I talk too fast.
Well, it's made you $10 in this case, so congratulations.
Thank you.
Our other award, the Chris Angel Mind Freak Award for Most Mind-Blowing Presentation, goes to Corinne.
Oh. It's really, people should know.
Yeah.
People deserve to know.
Well, thank you to all of our presenters tonight. If anyone is interested in presenting in a future 4YI, you can email me, Collin, Collin, @thetanknyc.org, and I can get you on the list for that. I think we're probably going to take November off. We'll probably come back in December, though, so feel free to come back then. Any parting words from anybody?
Thanks everyone for watching, and thank you for having us here tonight. Thank you for getting us all together.
Yeah, thanks, Collin.
Big agree. If anybody has any hydroxychloroquine leads, as I said, this is not a done story yet. Just like I talked to Collin, he already put his email there, and then maybe Collin can pass him along.
For sure.
Cool.
All right.
I just want to know, what would it take to start a petition for Volkswagen to change their name? Still call them. That'll make it all better. If they would just change the name, it would be what we all needed.
It's just the name carries different meaning in every, generation. So in the future, I mean, it's a big deal. They change their platform, and then they're global. They're making electric stuff all over the world. Maybe what'll happen.
Globalists.
Yes.
Oh my God. Well, have a great rest of your Tuesday, everybody. Much love to you all. Thank you to all of us watching. I want to also give a quick shout out to Kent and also Lori Skaderna and also Marsha Lawson. Those three folks bought tickets at our highest ticketing level, and so get a shout out on the show. So if you stuck around.
Thanks, Mom. Thanks, Mom. That's very sweet.
All right. Have a good night, everybody. Thanks for being here, and talk to y'all soon.
Thanks.
Bye.